Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face. So my next interview is with Joseph Kay. He is a writer, he's a creator, he's a showrunner, he's an executive producer, and he's talking about a whole lot of things, once again, here on Face2Face, but really connected to a relatively new television series called Transplant, a Canadian, unabashedly Canadian series that looks like it's all set in Toronto, but apparently largely shot in Montreal. You'll see cityscapes and so on of Toronto, but it's a medical drama, and it's going to be premiering on NBC in the very near future. And it's and Joseph and I talk about this. How can a show be entertaining but important at the same time, and how can it actually have something to say and entertain and just sort of exist on a Tuesday night from 8 till 9 o'clock in that time slot. But this is a film that's, Joseph would probably go out of his way to say it's not political, but it certainly steps into that arena, this idea of issues that matter, and isn't that what politics is really all about, or at least supposed to be about? And so it gets into a really interesting and difficult territory, emotional territory, to PTSD and new Canadians and refugees and this, and as Joseph talks about the universality and the specific, this idea of similarity through difference, and why is politics such a binary thing? And we talk about family and trust, and the show gets into these issues in a way that's, I think, healthy and makes a lot of sense, and of course roots it basically in an ER. And for those of you who like medical dramas, and most of us do, it seems to me, or at least lots of us do, there's plenty there to enjoy. And the main character, I fell in love with the main character within seconds. And I think that's a testament to the show. I think it's a testament to the direction and the cinematography and the writing and all of the above. But Hamza Haq, the actor who plays Bash, this ER doctor, this Syrian doctor, new to Canada, who's starting over. And that's kind of really what this conversation for that Joseph and I have is really all about. So buckle up, listen in. You're going to enjoy the show. It's like I said, it's going to be re-aired, I believe, season 1 on CTV soon, and premiering on NBC. And I would imagine Joseph and Hamza and the team and everyone else involved is very excited about that. So stay tuned. Don't forget davidpecklive.com. Some changes coming there to the website soon. I'm going to bring everything under one umbrella, I think. And my writing and my speaking and my podcasting is going to be there. And even maybe a little bit of the magic that I do is going to be found there. I think I'm going to hide it with a password or some kind of thing like that, some sort of mysterious thing like that. But it's an offering. I'm actually going to be offering up, we're going to draw for people who are willing to leave iTunes reviews. We're going to do a draw, and I'm going to give away a free monthly online magic show for the time being. Maybe even have a special guest, a friend of mine or two, join as well to try to drive people to iTunes to leave reviews for the show if you're enjoying what we're doing here. But don't forget davidpecklive.com. Find out more about my writing and my speaking. And you can order a copy of Real Change is Incremental there. We'd love for you to do that. Also, face2facelive.ca, over 520 interviews published there, including this one with Joseph. Many more coming up. Toronto International Film Festival's around the corner. Lots going to be happening there as well. And don't forget, you can advertise on Face2Face. You can we can do shoutouts, we can do special interviews, banner ads on the website. We are getting hundreds of thousands of unique visits a month to the site here and through Rabble. So reach out if you're interested in doing that. And also you can support us through Patreon, and we're going to try to beef that up in the next little while. You're going to start seeing us more on social media, and I'm excited about that. And don't forget rabble.ca for a whole host of other thinkers and writers, podcasters, bloggers, people talking about the news for the rest of us, news that matters. So stay tuned though, and please, once again, I'm going to say it again if I haven't already. Can you hear the smile? Please take the time to leave us a review review. If you like what we're doing here on Face to Face on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it. But coming right up to talk about his new TV series and starting over, his new TV series, Transplant, and about starting over is Joseph Kay, coming right up. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We are joined by a very special guest here with us today. I'm not sure. I always wonder, Joseph, where we are. I'm thinking this is about 525 interviews published or going to be published. We've got Joseph Kay here with us today on Face to Face, talking about his new television show, relatively new, Transplant. Joseph, thanks for taking the time to hang out with us here on Face to Face.
Thanks for having me, David. I'm happy to be here.
It's so funny. I always say for hanging out with us, it's, well, you and I are us. We're the community, and but it is something I'm trying to do with this, this platform, and that is to try to create empathy with not only with my guests, but with the people who are listening, and also usually with the stories that my guests are trying to tell. And often it's documentarians or directors, and in your case, sort of writer, director, producer, executive producer, to talk about people and stories and things that matter. Joseph, tell us a little bit about how that applies to Transplant.
Great question. First of all, it's interesting that, when you say us, there is something so intimate about listening to podcasts. You're listening on your headphones and you feel like you're there in the middle of that conversation. And as a
Right.
listener, I love it. So I think it's appropriate that you do that. I would say the thing about Transplant, it's a story about a refugee starting his life over again. He's from a very specific place with a very specific set of experiences. But since the show was conceived of, and I'm happy to talk about all of that, to me and to us, the people that I made the show with, that what we were doing really was we were searching for universality in the specific. And by telling a story about a very specific man's journey, what we were doing was providing an insight into the idea of starting over, which is something that everybody identifies with in some way, shape, or form. We started it obviously long before the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world right now, but we're all at some point faced with how to start over. And to ground that question, in the context of a hospital show that's being made for a network, so therefore something that has to be populist. Don't use that word in a pejorative sense. It just literally has to be populist.
Right.
So
right.
to ground that in the story of a very specific person's very dramatic experience with starting over, and then to try to look for ways in which a larger audience can identify with that theme, in a way that we can continue to tell and retell that theme and variations on it, was what I thought would be accessible as I ventured out on it.
Did you know, I mean, when you started thinking about this, I mean, I think I remember when ER was written, that was like a discovery way after Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton. There was like, well, we went back to this, teleplay that I wrote X amount of years ago. When you guys stepped into this show, were you intentional about Syria, issues like mental health, PTSD, and so on? Was that really first and foremost, or did that kind of unfold or bubble to the surface the deeper you got into the story? And I guess everybody's story kind of unfolds, doesn't it? Whether it's a teleplay or real life.
Yeah, it definitely does. No matter what you bring to it, it's always you're chipping at the ice and looking for what's under the ice. But it was late 2000, and it was late 2016. There had just been a fairly consequential election in the United States of America.
Right. Oh yeah. Which one was that?
You may have heard of it.
I may have heard of it. Yeah.
At the time, obviously it was he had campaigned, and he made such an issue of immigration in ways that were so corrosive, and it was just dominating the world and the headlines. And that's where it was hard. I mean, we were all ensconced in that and still are. And at the same time, almost, conversely, in a way, that a lot was being written in the media here in Toronto about crisis in Syria and the families in Toronto and elsewhere in Canada who were sponsoring Syrian refugees, because the system for doing that in Canada is different than it is.
Right.
And I was just thinking about how I was thinking about two things at the time. I was thinking about that, and at the same time wanted to develop medical drama for CTV in Canada. And while developing the drama and doing research into that, I've been doing a lot of research, and I was reading about the experience of international medical graduates in Canada
Oh, okay.
who
Yeah.
face like an insurmountable barrier to
Right.
getting residencies. It's much easier in the U.S. And in fact, there's just really uh, almost impenetrable bureaucracy to getting your residency spot in Canada if you've been trained elsewhere. And the two just kind of married. This
Right.
we all had in exploring these kinds of stories about immigrants and refugees in the face of what was going on, and this desire I had to sort of write a show that was set in the medical space. After I realized how hard it was, the two just kind of became they just married in my brain, and then we from there I it was I just followed it.
It's interesting, you've got you got a real balance going on. And by the way, congratulations! I've seen 3 episodes, and my wife has watched the whole first season, and I know that you've got a second season, I believe, or I don't know if you're allowed to say that yet, but and you're going to be in U.S. television, NBC, in a couple of weeks' time. So congrats! I mean, it's got to feel pretty good. I would think you guys are pretty proud of the show.
It does. Thank you, and we are. Yeah, it was very rewarding to see audiences respond to it in the way that we hoped they would. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. What I love about it too is that it is, and it's always so weird. I've interviewed so many filmmakers, and you see a documentary that's about an issue that's challenging and upsetting, let's say, and then you get this director or producer or whoever on the phone, and you say, "Wow, I really enjoyed your film," and it just it doesn't really add up, right? It's like this just wow. I'm finding myself of late saying, "Am I allowed to say that I enjoyed your film?" You know, but what I love about Transplant is that you're handling some pretty touchy, wrong word, pretty sensitive issues, and it seems like in every episode, you're just building on the layers. I mean, we've got mental health issues and PTSD. We've got immigration issues, new Canadian issues, and just so many things. And I think it's really quite wonderful. Can you talk a bit about walking that fine line? And maybe it's not a fine line. Maybe you guys are just stepping right into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to walk the fine line, the intention's always been to write to the best of our ability the emotional truth of the main character. Like generally, these kinds of shows tend to be ensembles, which
Right.
makes they're soaps or they're melodramas, and they tend to be ensembles. And because we're trying to do with our show two things, we're trying to tell an immigrant story and we're trying to tell a network hospital story, kind of at the same time. And so you see that kind of narrative hybrid a bit less. You do see it, but you see it a bit less. And so what what I set out to do was to be guided by a kind of grounded emotional truth of
Mm,
the main character's experience, and stay away from soap and stay away from melodrama. And if I could do that, then everything would kind of flow from there. The themes that we explore in his life and in his experience, we could use them to sort of butt into the other characters, whether it's in their reaction to him or whether it's three steps removed, but sort of just follow those themes and try to stay where we could, really across the board, grounded and honest, instead of letting things get soapy and melodramatic. So it was about kind of finding that tonal space
right.
for the show, and also making sure there was lots of heart. Because I think it's interesting what you said about, you can watch something that's really challenging and really dark, and our show isn't dark, but it explores dark issues. But if you have the heart, then I think you also you don't alienate the audience, or it makes you feel at any rate that you liked it because you kind
Well,
of feel the heart.
absolutely, and I think what's so fascinating about Hamza's character, Bashir, I believe, is you. I'm pretty much liked him within the first 26 frames.
Mm.
Like, honestly, I was in. And you can empathize with him immediately for whatever reason. And is it facial expression? Is it the eyes? Are the eyes the key to the soul? The key to the soul. But anyway, it's wonderful. So from a casting perspective, you guys nailed it with him. That's for sure. And then I'm just fascinated too by storytelling and film, and eagerly awaiting Tenet and Christopher Nolan's new film. I'm a huge fan.
Me too.
The complexity, right? And I mean, just in that opening sequence in the pilot, within what is it, 3-4 minutes, where we're introduced to a few of the key characters. We got some suspicion. We got issues of trust, maybe. I mean, there's just so much packed into this TV show that normally you just kind of sit down and turn on and watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But wow, there's a whole lot more going on than meets the eye.
Yeah, thank you. We thought, we thought, well, let's really start in a way that grabs you, and I think that there's something just so right about what you said about Hamza's eyes. He's got beautiful eyes, just wide, evocative, eyes, and we're just lucky that that he does. But
Right.
There's something about showing him, you show him cutting meat in a kind of dingy kitchen, and you wonder, why am I looking at this? And then you show him having a vague conversation with his buddy who works there, where some money is exchanged, and they're talking in Arabic, and you wonder, why am I looking at this? Am I supposed to be nervous for this guy?
That's right. Right.
And I think it's about 2 minutes by the time the truck comes and crashes through the window. And it's the kind of mystery of that was very inviting. I had known him and as an actor on previous project, and had thought about him for the role, knew he was talented, but didn't know that thing that you touched upon, just the kind of vulnerability in we knew that he had it, but we didn't really know the power of it until he did his work on this show. And I think,
well, there's a real honesty to him. And I even felt that watching him. What is he, a short order cook? Is that what he would be called, I guess, at this pita joint, I guess you could say, somewhere in Toronto. But he's earnest, and he's a hard worker, and he's focused. I mean, I just love how you can communicate that in under about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's a testament, I think, to the writing and the directing and the shooting and Hamza and on all of it. And of course the subject matter too, I suppose. But I love too that the mystery of it is really, really, really quite compelling. I also, Joseph, I love too how you guys have really, and again, I've seen 3 episodes and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it. But I love some of the lines. I mean, I'm just going to quote a few back to you, and I hope they make you smile. But you're learning math in a whole new language. I studied philosophy for years and continue to read deeply. And that for me is like, okay, let's just stop. Let's just have a conversation about that, folks. You're learning math in a whole new language. I mean, what are the implications of that, right? About for new Canadians. And then let's try to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. Let's go to the country they're from, that they've grown up in, and let's go there and learn math in their language. Right? What can this do for us from an empathetic perspective? Or how about practicing medicine in the dark? You learn to sharpen other skills. Just wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. And I think in the last episode, Bishop gets a pretty good line about some things, or some truths are better left unsaid, or something like that. Anyway, just wanted to say again, validate and affirm, and I love how you're bringing this sense of cultural and political and social import into Thursday night entertainment. It's fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. The math thing, I have young kids, and you realize that they do learn math now through writing. When I was learning arithmetic in grade school, you were just doing, it was rote, you would do equations with numbers, but now now it's all written. So it's all paragraph form. And so I remember and then of course one of them was in French, which I sort of muddle through, but I'm not strong in. And when I was trying to do math homework in French, which is mostly written, you realize, what kind of experience is that for a kid from Syria who doesn't know the language at all and doesn't is trying to learn the language, and then also maybe knows the math but not the language, and it is a really interesting little observation. And I think the idea that it's just a small line, but it invites empathy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the invitation of empathy, which is so exciting for me.
Well, and I love, what was your line out of the gate about universality in the specific? One of the lines I've been using of late with respect to my podcast and just some of the other work that I do is this promoting this idea of similarity through difference.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of the other way around, which seems to be what's happening, I mean, all over the world, I suppose. And it's easy for us Canadians to lob stones at our southern, neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
But the division, right? The polarity, it's just so easy to go us them,
Yeah.
pull up down, positive, negative. And I trust shows like yours are introducing people to other ways of seeing, and isn't that what great storytelling is all about?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I think it would have been easy, and still would be easy for either our show or something in that space to become political. But if you become political, then you become part of that polemic that you're just discussing,
Right.
them, or everything's so binary, and that doesn't seem to help. So if you just try to keep it um, honest to experience, and just try to avoid the political with it. Just try to have empathy and show related experiences, and never have anybody on the show take a political stand on the issue one way or the other. I mean, you can obviously tell where our leanings lie just by
Right.
humanity, but that's
Sure.
not the point. The point is what you just described, David, about, just sort of showing the kind of shared experience, and inviting that kind of empathy. And if you're doing that, then hopefully you're contributing to that conversation in a positive way.
I love the whole bit about vaccinations, and doesn't Bashir's Hamza's character say something about no, we basically would kill to get vaccinations here
Yeah.
in Syria, right?
Yeah.
Like, talk about sort of, I mean, it's a counter narrative, but it's actually a narrative that just hasn't been told, right? Really, in a profound and deep and intimate way. And so that's how we're going to change this whole system. And when I say, I mean globally, right? That, like, just continuing to tell fresh and different stories
Yeah.
over and over, and promote this idea, like you said, of universality through the specific.
Yeah. It was interesting when you think about like how much privilege you have to be able to say you're an anti-vaxxer, without
Right,
getting
right.
without trying to like make them into bad guys, because we told the story of one and tried not to make him into a bad guy. But you just have so much privilege to say no to it, when there are people who, yeah. And so it was tricky with Hamza, because there's like 8 versions of that line on camera, where he says it emphatically, or he says it impassioned, or he says it earnestly. But I really wanted it to be thrown away, where he's not being so boxy about it. He's just kind of stating matter of factly, why
No,
people vaccinated. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to him.
yeah, no, this is just totally out of my realm of reality. Yeah, why would you do that? Yeah, I interviewed a few years ago Miranda Bailey. I don't know if you've seen her film The Pathological Optimist, but yeah. Anyway, it brought it back home, and just the whole idea of, like, how is that even possible? But I love the connection you make to privilege there. I think it's really, really, really interesting. I watched. I think it was in the second episode, and he comes back into the I guess it's the ER, or at least the hospital sort of area there, and 2 of his colleagues are watching some of, I believe, the white helmets on their phone.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and I don't want this to sound, I mean, I consider myself a man of the world and well read, and I watch a lot of news, etc. But I wonder how many people were seeing images of Aleppo for the first time. And I think that's a real, talk about privilege, talk about opportunity, Joseph. I love that you guys are doing what I would call important work with this. Like I said, and I don't want to be, like, you used the word pejorative earlier. I'm not being pejorative here, but in this, Thursday night, 1 hour block of time in people's lives, right? And the people are busy, but isn't it beautiful that you get to plant these seeds?
Yeah, that you can just remind them.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, you can just kind of remind them quietly. And I think at the time we talked about what should be said about that while they're watching it. Should they comment on it? should he comment on it? And then no, nobody should comment on it. It's just like you said. It's just we're just reminding people this is happening in the world, and whether you choose to look at it or not, there it is.
So do you have a team of people that you've been working with for years that you just sort of trust? I noticed Sammy Khan is one of your story editors and writers. I interviewed him a little while back about his film St. Louis Superman, Oscar nominated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you just have a team of
Yes.
folks? Yeah.
So I originated the idea on my own, but then I have producers who I've been working with since then who've played a big role in developing the idea and moving it along and supporting me and working as a collective while we pitched it and developed it. And then began quite quickly in that process hiring other writers and contributors. Sammy was the first. Sammy's still with the show right now as the second season is in its early stages, but Sammy was the first writer that I hired. And as always in television, because you're making 13 1 hours, and each 1 hour contains 6 medical stories and overlapping emotional stories and all this, it's always written, with a team. In our
Right.
case, I think there were seven writers, depending on the month you might have showed up in the writers' room. So seven sort of writers, and then quite a few consultants, because we were writing something that was a very specific lived experience. So right from the very beginning, we wanted to make sure that we had enough voices and consultants with that experience who could help us stay true to the story. So there were a number of those the whole time, and still are to this second.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I would imagine again, we talked about community early on, and what I'm trying to do with Face2Face, I would imagine you do the same, in a great TV show or a great film. Isn't this why famous directors stick with cinematographers that they worked with forever and so on, right? It's about that tacit knowledge, I suppose, that you share, right? I was going to say groupthink, but that's the wrong phrase.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's certainly the tacit knowledge, and you get to know people's working relationships, what works for them, what doesn't. But for me, the great thing about it is the dialectic of it. Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
the team of rivals. I love the idea of the team of rivals. And everybody gets to challenge every idea that's put forward. And so what we have is, at its best, what we have is almost the opposite of groupthink. Where
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. It's great.
where there is an inherent hierarchy to these things. Who's got that title, who whatever. But in an ideal world, you kind of are able to put that aside, and just like every idea is up for grabs. And I like.
Well, that's so great that you create that kind of space, because I mean, you constantly, fairly often, you read of reports of producers, directors, and maybe actors too, who are, what's the phrase, close hold. It's all about them. It's my way or the highway, and I guess you get a certain vision when you do that, but hopefully it's done at least respectfully and with other people in mind. But it sounds like you guys really are kind of co-creating, which I think is going to make it a stronger show, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, if you're right, I mean, absolutely. If you're telling Bashir's very specific story, who am I to hoard that? The best.
Right, right.
The best thing I can do is, I had a vision for it. I had instincts for it that I tried to let guide it. And
Right.
you try to find things. This is our religion. These are the rules we want to try to follow for the most part. But then just to be open to finding the truth in it, which you can only do if you have people tell you that you're wrong all the time.
Any chance of writing in like a podcaster in the near future into an episode that you might want to do a cameo?
You never know.
You know, I mean, just how open are you, Joseph? So it's unabashedly Canadian. Can I say that?
Yeah,
Like it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Like I love the skyline shots. I love everything about that. And I'd love to hear about that from a production perspective, a funding perspective. Was that a conscious choice fiscally for financial reasons or creative reasons? And also connected to that, and this is a biggie, could this show have been made in the US?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in this business in Canada as a television writer in Canada through the period where we had to pretend we weren't here for the most part. Like if you were on CBC, you could be in Canada, but if
Right.
on any other network, you pretended that you weren't. You just never said
Yes.
where you were. And I'd always, it's awful. We none of us like that. None of us like,
Bay Street masquerading as Wall Street.
yeah, or right, or we're in generic North American city that we're not even ever going to name.
Right.
None of us like that. And something that's happened with the Netflixes of the world, this sort of, it's reminded audiences and American audiences that that it doesn't need to be set in New York or LA for American audiences to come to it, because lots of people watch Dark, which is a show in Germany on Netflix.
Right.
Lots of people in America watch it. So it's reminded them that that's, again, like sort of universality in the specific. So I feel like Canada has it started to happen here too, where that's become open to us. You see certain things having international success that are unabashed Canadian, and that's just really exciting. So for me, it was always going to be, set in Toronto. Interestingly, it's shot in Montreal, and all of the even the exteriors are shot in Montreal.
Oh wow. Okay.
This other than the establishings and the skyline.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But the Canadianness of it was always going to be there, and it's a much different story if it's an American story. There's no doubt about it. And I wouldn't have even tried. In fact, when we were talking about the idea originally, we thought if it was an American show that we were going to pitch to American broadcasters, it would be like a Honduran man scales the border wall when he's young, or is a dreamer, better yet, or one of those things, and then becomes, it would just, you take a different approach on it politically,
Sure.
or socially. But it was always going to be Canadian, and it needed to be Canadian, and that was where kind of our familiarity lied, and also the humanity of our healthcare system is so different. And if you start getting into the business of medicine from an American perspective, I think that brings you into different places that the story wouldn't really have needed to go to. And so the whole time we were making the show, we were making it with the support of an American studio, and there were lots of things about the differences in the approach of the business of healthcare between the two countries. And we just told the Canadian version the whole time, where nobody has to pay, and where we kind of just accept the fact that you have to wait 3 hours when you're in an emergency room. But at the end of the day, we still provide very good healthcare.
It's well, and you guys even make the point in the show about we don't deal very well with chronic pain. That's kind of the system as a whole. But I'm with you. I think anyone who's traveled the world and stood in line elsewhere, and I've been to a few different medical clinics in a few different countries around the world. It's a gift. It really is. And I love that you're able to highlight some of these things in a very understated way, and yet very passionately. Is that an oxymoron? Passionate understatement? I don't know. Maybe it is, but I feel like that's what Transplant's doing, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'm all about the little things, right? About planting that seed. How do you water it? The splash and ripple. How do you? And I think this type of storytelling, this really truly is what's going to change the world. It's lofty, but I really believe it, Joseph.
Thank you. I think I like that. I think you can be passionate and, what did you say? Understated and passionate.
I said passionate, understated. Maybe the word I'm looking for is you guys aren't unctuous. Like you're not shoving anything down anyone's throat, right? But the comments about the difficulties that a new Canadian's going to find getting into the medical system, or a comment about anti-vaccinations and so on. There's no baseball bats or sledgehammers involved, metaphorically.
I think you can be passionate and unassuming or whatever, because he's earnest, but he doesn't have an earnest personality. So he doesn't. So you can throw that stuff away, but he cares deeply. So I think it's I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. And if you avoid the baseball bats and throwing it in people's faces, then they don't feel assaulted by your opinion, right? They don't.
Right.
Trump
Nice.
should convert them. They just they just you're sneaking it in.
I love that. That's a great title for something. Assaulted by Opinions. That's a blog or an essay or something. Somebody's gonna have to write that op-ed in the very near future. I love that he cares, and it comes through everywhere. And that again is just such a wonderful message to communicate for all of us: teachers, parents, doctors, development workers, whatever it is we do. We got to care. Podcasters, we got to care. That's what's going to ultimately seep through, it seems to me, and make a difference. Hey, you must have been pretty pleased when UNHCR started tweeting about your show.
I was, yeah, that meant a lot.
I mean, come on, like that takes it to me anyway, and because of my background in international development, takes it kind of to a whole new level.
We were so honored by that, and yeah, they just started tweeting about it, and they would live tweet every episode.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, they made us feel like we had done something right, and
Right.
that there was something there that they wanted to amplify. Alongside just regular people like liking and enjoying the show, which is nice. But there was, it was a nice feeling, and they've continued to do that.
No, it's very cool. So listen, you executive producer, you got to be thinking already, like, what are we going to do in season 5, 6, and 7, right? So, what you got big plans? You got for the show, global takeover?
To be honest, I think my style and the people that I work with, our style is let's just kind of look as far ahead as we can see, which right now is just the immediate future, and kind of take it that way. And it's not the kind of show that requires kind of an overall narrative mythology. You just want to try to follow this guy's individual perspective and let that guide the storytelling. It's been like it has been for everybody in the world right now. 6 months with a prior 6 months, which will, which causes us to reevaluate everything of what our lives hold and what the story is speaking to. And I think that trying to be open to the experience of the pandemic and what it's asked us about ourselves, and try to follow that and to let it inform the storytelling somewhat, has been relevant. And also, the show's being written for season 2, but is of course delayed, like everything else in this business. So, no master plan. I mean, I know that with the sale in America, which is great, we're starting to sell in more territories as well. So I think the
nice
audiences are going to see the show.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and we live in a crazy global world, and so, like, what is globalization? That's a whole other. That's a course. That's books. That's a lifetime to answer that question. But people have access to this show, as we talked about before we hit the record button.
Yeah.
But isn't it wonderful that people are seeing Transplant? And that's that's got to make you sleep fairly well at night, even though you might be a little nervous about that NBC launch. I don't know. Is that true?
I'm not nervous about it.
Oh, cool. That's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah, like I think that
I would be.
I'm not. Like, I feel like we did work that I'm proud of, that I'm absolutely fine. I always say to people, you and I don't know, 2 people could sit and watch this movie, the movie The Phantom Thread, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know why I picked that one, but because I do know, because I watched it with somebody, and after the movie finished, I thought, my God, like that's just the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like every moment of it is perfect. And I watched it with somebody who was just bored, who is a really smart person who just didn't like.
Yep.
And so if that
isn't it fascinating, eh? Yeah. It's like how does that happen? It's really interesting.
It's what it is. And so if that can happen with that movie, which is just like a masterpiece, then we do our best, and we work hard, and we best work forward. And if I get to the point where I'm proud of it and I'm happy, then people are going to be what they are. I hope that it's positive and successful, and I hope that people don't read into the politics of it in ways that we don't want them to, and get angry and polemic and all those kinds of things. I just hope they accept the kind of simple.
Oh, I'm sure you'll have a few of those on social media, but you can ignore most of those, I'm sure.
I'll try.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's best not to read the press. It seems to me, from what little I've learned about that over the years. But I think it's years ago I took a group of. Do you remember the the very quite early, was probably about 19, Robert Downey Jr. film, Less Than Zero.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the book, and
Yeah,
I remember the movie a lot. Yeah.
Same. And the poster's framed on my wall in my office, and I'm a huge fan. And I just thought, wow, this is a guy going somewhere. And anyway, I took no joke, 6 friends to a theater out here in Mississauga. I'm pretty sure most of them didn't speak to me for a couple of weeks after that film. It's like, wow, that's an evening we'll never get back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is gorgeous. This is a life-changing film, right? It's just, I do love that about film. I really do. I find it sometimes frustrating when you hope somebody's going to go, oh, Dave, I get it. I see what you see, and isn't that what's so beautiful about art though? And about creating it. So, well, man, Joseph, I wish you all the success in the world with the show, and you've already had a library shelf full of it. Now it's time to fill the library. How's that?
Yeah, thank you, David. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's really great. How about creatively? What's you must be sort of thinking about other stuff too. But anything, and as we wrap up here, and again, it's so we're about NBC. CTV is going to be re-releasing season 1, I believe.
Yeah, it will be aired in simulcast as of September 1 at 10 p.m. Weekly, Tuesday nights when NBC airs the show. CTV will also air it, and you can find it on Crave and on Peacock if you're in the U.S.
Oh, Peacock, very good. So last thought, just before we wrap up, where are you at creatively? Is it consumed by Transplant right now?
Yes, my brain has mostly been consumed by Transplant since like late 2016, early 2017. But that said, in the since we wrapped shooting on season 1, it's very exciting when you start getting, the thing now exists. It exists in the world, which is exciting. And so a lot of the heavy lifting, it's always going to be hard. But like when you get it going, the heavy lifting is kind of done to some extent. And so it has been exciting for me in the last 3 or 4 months to start thinking what else is going to happen next for me creatively and what else. And there are a few irons on the fire, but like I tell my parents, David, I'll tell you when you need to know.
No, that's great. I mean, I think it's wonderful that you can focus like that, and I'm excited for you guys and for where the show's going to go, and I'm looking forward to episode 4, anxiously awaiting it. So I know it's already out, but my wife's way ahead of me on this one, so it's a good thing. We've been talking to Joseph Kay today here on Face to Face about his new television series, important, I would say, and entertaining. New television series called Transplant. Check it out on CTV. For our American listeners coming to NBC, I was going to say soon to a theater near you, but I guess it's your digital home theater near you. Joseph, wonderful chatting with you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. It's been great. Thank you so much.